All right, and hello everybody to another episode of the Generative AI Meetup Podcast. I'm joining you from Ohio, and Shashank is from India. We've been doing a lot of traveling recently, so we haven't actually had a ton of time to sit down and record one of these episodes, but we're really happy that we're able to talk about some news today. So we have a lot of exciting topics to talk about. Gemini 3, potentially the new top dog in terms of AI models, came out. Google's also released their new anti-gravity. We've got GPT 5.1, Grok 4.1, Kimi K2 thinking, and Yann LeCun is leaving Meta. So lots of things to talk about. So Shashank, I've heard you've been using Gemini 3. Pretty cool, right? So congratulations to Google for coming out with arguably the best model right now.
It's not bad. I finally feel proud to say I work on Google AI products because we are back in the lead. It took them a while. I think a lot of the other competitors released amazing models. ChatGPT helped reduce the confusion between like all the, thinking, not thinking, fast, small. And it seems like Google is going in a similar direction. They consolidated the UX, made the model better, and it seems like an all-around win for everyone involved, except the competitors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's even good for the competitors because it helps them to step their game up and continue to work hard on getting the next big thing. So yeah, let's talk about some of the benchmarks for the Gemini 3 Pro. So actually, let me share my screen here.
Oh, you want to share your screen?
Yeah, or unless you want to do it.
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So here it is. This is straight from Google of the model card. So I'll just read some of these off. But for the audio listeners, Gemini 3 Pro got 45.8% on humanities last exam, with search and code execution, 37.5% with no tools. For reference, Gemini 2.5 Pro got 21.6%, and Claude Sonnet 4.5 only got 13.7%. So, I mean, on that particular benchmark, Gemini 3 doing amazing. ARC-AGI.
Yeah, and I think
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. I was just going to chime in about ARC-AGI, but so to our listeners, the reason why this one is important is because this is an attempt to produce a set of tests that is a true indication of intelligence compared to all the other tests, which could just be fancy autocomplete based on questions you might find online about high school standardized tests or college tests. And so this one, humanities last exam, I believe is similar to ARC-AGI, which contains a lot of reasoning tests, which are getting harder and harder because these LLMs are saturating and kind of beating all of the other benchmarks, getting 90 something percent or 100 in some cases. So now we're coming up with new benchmarks, and two of those are humanities last exam and ARC-AGI 2.
Yes. And I mean, it's pretty amazing that the best model in the world right now only gets 31.1% on ARC-AGI, where a lot of these other benchmarks, it's getting close to 100%, right? I mean, there's only so much you can do, but ARC-AGI is still in the 30s. So, I mean, it's improving. It's actually improving pretty quickly. And I'm excited to see what it'll do on ARC-AGI 3, which is even harder. So I know we've talked about ARC-AGI in the past, but this is a benchmark that I really keep my eyes on because it's just not academic thinking. So it's kind of like an IQ test where you're looking for patterns. So the whole idea of ARC-AGI was to find something that was easy for humans, but hard for AI. So kind of like the idea that ARC has is if you run out of things that are easy for humans, then you've basically achieved AGI. So they don't actually define AGI as like an end goal. It's just like basically it's like one of those things. It's like if you can go and give AI a task and it can solve it, but that's good. But if a human, or it's like if you can give AI a task and it can't solve it, but a human can, then we haven't achieved AGI yet, right? So it's like as long as you can find a counterpoint where the AI can't do a thing that a human can easily do, then it's like, okay, we're not there yet. So ARC-AGI is basically just like a big test of all the things that are easy for humans but hard for AI. And then once we're able to make it where there's a test where we can't think of anything else, then AGI has been achieved just by default. So anyways, exciting test. There's a few other benchmarks that are on here. I don't want to bore everybody by going through each one. But Gemini 3 is definitely a best in class model. So very incredible. I've been using it a little bit via Cursor. I've actually upgraded to the most premium tier of Cursor, and it's money well spent. So as soon as Gemini 3 Pro was out, I was able to use it for my programming, and I'm incredibly impressed with it. I do have a couple of gripes though. So one thing that was kind of disappointing to me about Gemini 3 Pro was the maximum output length. So, all right, this is going to be a little bit nuanced for the listeners, but so with the models, right? We have the context, which is how long your total conversation can be with the LLM, but there is another concept of like max output. So the max output is how much text can be put out by the model. And unfortunately, that's only 65,000 characters. Now, that's a ton, don't get me wrong. But other models like GPT-5.1 and Kimi K2 Thinking, which have also come out recently, have max outputs. So like GPT 5.1 has a max output of 128,000 characters, which is roughly double. And then Kimi K2 Thinking has a max output of 262,000 characters. Because the thing is if you can get a really, really high max output and a really, really high context, then you can just throw all of your information into an LLM and have it give a really long, thought out response when that's required. So, for example, if I wanted an LLM to write a book for me, and I wanted that book to be, 1,000-page anthology on the history of Rome, a 64,000 token output window may not be enough to give me that huge anthology I'm looking for, right? But 120,000 or 262,000 is long enough. So I think that we're going to see, like, if we want these LLMs to be able to handle more and more tasks autonomously, we're going to need to work on not just increasing the context, which is important. And Gemini 3 is winning on the context window. It's got one of the longest contexts, but I want to see them competing more on the max token output. So all you guys at DeepMind who are listening to this, all you executives at Google, please, for Gemini 3.1, I want to see a max output of 120,000, at least match GPT 5.1. That's my ask. So all the people at Google who are using this to figure out your product roadmap, please, that's my feature request. Increase your max output size.
Yeah, so for context, I think a page of text is about 1,200 tokens. So the 65 something thousand token limit for Gemini 3 would equate to like 50 pages of text. And that's about, I think, the limit for how much you want an LLM to do today. for most use cases. I think Mark has an exception. He's working on something pretty interesting, but for most use cases, uh, the one that comes to mind is deep research, where a lot of these LLMs do research from dozens, if not hundreds, of pages. I think ChatGPT does dozens, Gemini does close to 100, and Claude does like close to 500 different pages. I don't know if it reads all those pages, but it at least looks at all those sources to see if it's worth including in the research output. And these research papers are roughly tens of pages long in my anecdotal testing. And there's also a lot of good research being done on how long you can let these LLMs go and do something on your behalf unsupervised in the form of AI agents that have tool calling, web search, and a bunch of other capability. So I think I might have to find the paper later, but I think the longest any of these models can go unsupervised is max a couple hours. It used to be about 30 minutes or less than an hour just a few months ago. And now I think they're reaching a few hours of doing work on their own unsupervised. So, I think the industry will kind of mature along together in terms of how long they can go unsupervised, how long the output token can be, and also like more modalities and more capabilities.
Yeah, speaking of having things go on for a really long time, for those that don't use Cursor, um, if you do use Cursor, they have this really cool thing where they have a plan mode where you can talk with AI and come up with a plan and then have the AI execute the plan, and it will run to build the plan for your code for a pretty long time, as long as it takes, really. And I've been playing around with the different models, and the one that I actually have enjoyed the most at using kind of autonomously with this type of thing is the GPT 5.1 Codex High. So yeah, OpenAI still has like the worst naming ever, but yeah, their Codex is their coding model, and the High is the high reasoning one. So I've been using that, and it can work autonomously for a very long time, and with really great results. I've been incredibly impressed. Sometimes I'll need to do a little prodding, but overall, like incredible. So nice job, OpenAI, on your Codex model. Because it's been a little while since I've tried Codex. I tried it when it first came out and I was unimpressed, but it seems like they've been putting in the work and it's been getting quite good. But speaking of coding models, Google's come out with anti-gravity. That's so congrats, Google, again. Shashank, do you want to tell everybody about anti-gravity?
Yeah, I think it's exciting to see Google really maturing in the AI space. And one of the big use cases is coding. Cursor is, I don't know, a unicorn, maybe like a Deca unicorn. And there's tons of other coding AI startups that have come out. We hosted an event at our meetup specifically for AI coding agents, and there were so many of them focusing on so many niche verticals. But I still think like the most common use case of coding agents is within an IDE, and anti-gravity is Google's competitor to the Cursor and formerly Windsurf. But I think a lot of the Windsurf work that was done was brought over to help make anti-gravity from the folks that came over at Google. I've been using it internally, and it's been great. It has a lot of features that are similar to Cursor's because I use both. I used to pay for Cursor, and I use anti-gravity internally for work at Google. And I love that these IDEs are getting more and more autonomous. They used to be able to, do simple code completion, and then we started getting more complex code generation, and now we have just like I forget what it's called. It's called turbo mode, I think, in anti-gravity, where you just let it run without asking you for confirmation. So any high-level complex changes that it's trying to make across multiple files, multiple types of features. It'll just go ahead, run commands, make changes, copy files, move stuff around, all on its own. And there's still like a balance. If you're an engineer and trying to be productive and build something that is reliable, right now, I think the recommended mode, I just went through the setup for the public anti-gravity app, and their recommended mode is not like full-blown autonomous AI coding, but it's like one step below that. It is, I guess, AI assisted, AI enhanced coding, and it's been really good. I like it.
Yeah, so anti-gravity looks really exciting. I downloaded it. I was trying to use it, but unfortunately, I ran into a quick snag trying to actually link my Google account. So there was like a sign up page, and then it redirected me to the browser, and it never would go back and open anti-gravity, unfortunately. So I wasn't able to try it. I think it
For
may be.
reference, I think it's because Mark uses very edgy browsers like Brave. But I just downloaded it, logged in, worked, first try. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so there may have been an issue with my settings, but Brave is Chromium based, so what, I thought that it would work, but whatever. It's exciting, and so if you're listening, you can use Gemini 3 Pro for free in anti-gravity. So that's really cool. So if you want to try out Gemini 3 Pro for free on your code and use Google's new IDE, I would recommend trying it out. I couldn't try it, but I'm really upset that I couldn't try it. I'll probably try again. So exciting stuff. Next topic. The GPT 5.1 came out. Shashank, have you tried this one yet?
I have, because I subscribe to a bunch of different LLM providers, including on and off OpenAI. I like their image generation, um, especially because I've been comparing the new image generation from Google with OpenAI. And Google's model is, funnily named Nano Banana because that term was viral and it took off. And I forget, ChatGPT doesn't have any funky naming like that, but it's just called their image model, and it's really good. It is more creative. I think the Gemini image model is more coherent. If you ask it to make edits, it can basically replace Photoshop for you. You can ask it to make very specific edits, upload an image, ask it, hey, change the color of the sky, remove this object, change the grass over here to something else. And it can do it without making any changes to the rest of the image. ChatGPT, on the other hand, reimagines everything in my experience. But the model has been great. I've been using deep research from all of these providers. I like that ChatGPT's most of its responses have been really fast, mostly because they now automatically handle the routing to decide when to give really quick answers and when to take a longer time, think, and give some responses. It's good, it's fast, and the image generation is amazing too.
Yeah, I really like the new GPT 5.1 model. It feels a lot more conversational compared to some of the other models. So I know it's not a big deal, but it feels slightly less sycophantic, which is a big word that a lot of people have been using to describe these LLMs. So I actually didn't know what sycophantic was until I looked it up. But apparently, what that means is where the model says it's kind of like what is it, like bootlicking, that type of behavior where it'll be like, oh, you're so good, you're so right, I'm so wrong, you're amazing, where it just kind of goes and says, it's kind of like the model's a yes man. And I feel like GPT 5.1 is slightly less of a yes man. And I think it's been really great for writing. So I've been incredibly happy with it for some of my use cases. And it's been a really great kind of middle ground between being incredibly smart plus having a long output window, like a decent enough context. And it's been
You know,
having really what?
there's been a South Park episode about the sycophancy with ChatGPT. I'm not the biggest fan of South Park, but it was very topical, and it's a real concern because if the model agrees with everything you say all the time, that can lead to some unrealistic expectations and thoughts about your own ability, and lead you to do things that may not be the wisest decision. So now it's kind of like grounded on reality a little bit more and can disagree with you at times, which I think is healthy.
Yeah, I saw this website where it was called like Killed by AI or something like that. It's kind of a dark topic, but I think it's one that is important. So there are people who exist who just like don't have any friends or social networks to talk about, and they will use AI as kind of like a therapist, and that can be incredibly dangerous because if the AI just continually agrees with you and you say you want to do something like self-harm and the AI said, "Oh, that's a wonderful idea," people could get killed or hurt or do things that are a bad idea. If the AI will just agree with all your bad ideas, that
I,
could be
actually,
incredibly
I
dangerous.
actually I think I would like to disagree because I think therapy has been a really popular use case for LLMs, and people. Again, this is anecdotal. I haven't done a lot of research on this, but a lot of people I meet use ChatGPT as their informal therapist, talk to it almost every day, complain to it about their problems, get advice about things that they're trying to do. And I really feel like most of the time for most people, this is a good thing. Um, but I think as with all things that operate at scale, there'll be some fraction of people, maybe like 0.01% of people that might be in sensitive situations, mental health issues, other, extenuating circumstances that 0.1% of like close to a billion users that ChatGPT has is a couple million people. So um, these are only issues at scale. But I think honestly, most of the time, it is great for a replacement therapist or even uh, a first round of triage before seeking professional medical help. Again, this is not medical advice.
Yeah, so I'm gonna partially agree with you, and I actually use OpenAI and all these models for advice all the time, and I think in general it's really great. But I also think that it is possible to um, somehow go down a rabbit hole where you're talking to it, and it will agree on things that are just not a good idea. And I think that a human therapist probably, but you never know, wouldn't give the same type of information. However, there's potentially millions of therapists all over the world, compared to like one company that you can put your finger at. So if one therapist makes bad like gives bad advice, maybe that therapist might go to jail, right? Unfortunately, it's like now it's like if I think I heard the stat that OpenAI now has around 800 million active users, which is crazy. And if they have that many people, and if it like 0.00001% of them get really bad advice and ended up like hurting themselves, that's really unfortunate. So it's like a fine line that we need to walk, and I don't really have a good answer for it. And maybe that's just like a fact of life. We still allow driving, but we make you wear seatbelts. And just because people get in accidents doesn't mean that we're gonna just ban driving because somebody could get hurt. And maybe with new technology, people just could get hurt. But it is something I think to be aware of, that there are potential downsides to AI. But again, Shashank, I'm with you. Like, I still use this for advice all the time, but not everybody is necessarily like the same mental and headspace, or knows like the limitations of these models. And a lot of people think that they are lots smarter than they are. So I don't know. I don't really have like a good solid like point on this, but it's just something I think to be aware of.
Just a small tangent. So I've been traveling for about a month, and I'll be in India for a little while longer. And I'm I'm able to see a world devoid of any AI, where these people don't care, don't know, aren't bothered by the existence of a technological shift that is ushering us towards the singularity. And occasionally I show some of the people that I meet how to use ChatGPT and how to use some of the image models, some of the thinking models, some of the deep research models to do tasks that they do day to day. And I kind of see this aha moment that I had 2 years ago all over again in these people. Um, so I think there's like an immense benefit that we sometimes forget because humans have a remarkable ability to acclimate to things and get used to this new level of amazing progress. And now we're just nitpicking over, ChatGPT 5 versus 5.1 versus, it scored like 2% more on ARC-AGI or whatever other standardized test. But like, oh my God, this is a significant productivity unlock, and insane efficiency booster. And it's been very gratifying to be able to share that with a new group of people who have never fully utilized these tools, because this has all been happening really fast. The early days had a lot of issues, a lot of fear, a lot of hallucinations. There's the people who are worried about their jobs being taken away by AI. And so within all of this noise, political propaganda, it's hard to realize that, hey, maybe you can just use this for day-to-day things, and it's pretty useful most of the time.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly well said. And you're right. I think that we forget kind of the bubble that we live in. So like I was talking to my parents about large language models, and I've mentioned LLM in conversation, and they're like, LLM, what's that again? It's just like, people don't know like what LLMs are. And I mean, I'm assuming all the listeners listening to this podcast should know what an LLM is, but your average person doesn't know what an LLM is. They're not familiar with what an API is. All these things, right? That people just you don't know, you don't care to know. It's like you're just living your life, doing your thing, and this thing is just done by a bunch of nerds in Silicon Valley. And yeah, I mean,
Have
it
you
is
been
what
able
it is.
to have you convinced your parents to use any AI tools yet?
Um, my parents use AI tools a lot, actually, but
Oh,
they just didn't know the word of LLM.
ah,
They just know it as like ChatGPT, right?
right.
It's like you
That's the
don't.
new verb.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like, I mean, what is Google? They use the PageRank algorithm, which is like really famous, but who knows what the PageRank is? Which is, what was that named after? Larry Page. It was kind of like a pun because it was like Larry Page. Plus, it was like trying to figure out like the backlinks to like a particular page. So it's like, oh, the PageRank. So clever. But like, who knows that? I would just say, oh, Google it. They don't say, oh, let me do like a PageRank search on this uh collection of documents, right? I mean, anyways, so, but yeah, it's exciting stuff, and I for one am incredibly excited about the future. And just like to think that we started this podcast, I think it was about 2 years ago, something like that. And so we've been talking about this, and just to see like how far we've come in the past 2 years. I mean, like 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, ChatGPT was launched. So like 5 years ago, LLMs didn't exist, and now like next year, Shashank just pre-ordered a humanoid robot that is going to be walking around his house and is going to be, doing his dishes and stuff, right? Like that's insane. So like I know a lot of people are saying AI is in a bubble, and yeah, it probably is in a bubble. And I've been saying it more than anybody that like AI is like probably in a bubble. But like this bubble is like not gonna stop with like LLMs. It's gonna stop with humanoid robot. It's gonna stop once the AI has replaced everything and there's like a whole new paradigm. Like we're gonna be looking at the history books as like the time period where humanity lost its like importance almost, like where the robots will just be able to do everything better than humans. Like eventually we're running to a point where 100% of tasks will be able to be done and done better by a robot, and we will usher in an age of just like extreme abundance, right? Like if you have a robot that is able to do all of the tasks, right? Like it's able to clean your house, do your yard work, cook you dinner, deliver your packages, drive you around, make new products, research new products, figure out new drug discoveries. All of that will just be done by robots, and it will usher in a complete age of high abundance where there will be people with haves and have more. There will not be like have nots in the future. There will only be the haves and have more. So people who have a lot will still be upset by the have mores, because they'd be like, people always look at the other person and say, I want more. But we're going to have so much abundance in the future. Like it's going to be silly. And yeah, that'll put in like some sort of meaning crisis where people will be wondering like, oh, what do I do with all my free time? But you know what? That's a good problem to have, right? Like I would sure rather have a meaning crisis over a starvation, disease, and despair crisis, right? Like we're going to have so much abundance, it's going to be silly. And that's happening far faster than we know it. And in a certain sense, these AI companies are overvalued, but also for the amount of good that they're going to do for the world, they're so incredibly undervalued. It's insane. So I'm like both bearish in the short term, but so incredibly bullish in the long term that we are going to see like just so much abundance, and we're going to be going to space. Like, I mean, just Blue Origin, I think they just sent a rocket that went to Mars just like a couple days ago. Like insane. Like we are living in some of the most exciting times in the world, and I am here for it.
Oh wow, I love that rant. I kind of forgot after dealing with the day-to-day announcements of incremental updates, but yes, I think that excitement is the reason why we started the meetup, why we talk about this, why we work on AI stuff, why Mark quit his job thinking life is too short to work full-time on AI for his own. So well said. Well said, Mark. Also, I didn't know Blue Origin launched a spaceship to Mars. That's insane.
Yeah. So
yeah, but
fun fact, Blue Origin is now ran by Dave Limp. So he was my boss. So I mean, like, we never met. Like he was technically like my boss's 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 boss. But like, he was my boss. And now he's heading up Blue Origin.
that's awesome. Speaking of robotics, yes, I did pre-order the humanoid robot, which will be delivered at sometime in 2026. It could be December 31st of 2026 for all I know. But I did order my parents a new robot vacuum. There's tons of competitors all coming from China, which again goes to show how mature the manufacturing industry in China is, and how much they've been able to bring the price down. So this one is much better at obstacle avoidance, at vacuuming, at mopping. at going across multiple rooms, figuring out the algorithm, avoiding pets, humans, and then rerouting. Uh, and this is like a very tangible way to see how this AI that we keep talking about is proliferating and helping us day to day throughout our lives. Apart from all the buzz that we see LLMs, like we forget that the robot vacuums were the first consumer grade robotics devices that were out there, and they're working great. Which is also kind of funny because now a lot of um, tiny robots, self-driving robots, have been deployed for the last mile delivery problem. If you order something off of DoorDash, your dinner is going to be delivered maybe half a mile, a couple blocks away with a robot. And it was the most surreal thing. I saw some college kid. They were posting a video of this robot, and they're like, "Hey, I'm like this DoorDasher, but this is gonna take away my job." And it was just like, what is what kind of a time are we living through? The whole on-demand industry didn't exist more than 10 years ago. There was no such thing as a DoorDash. And this person is upset because now this robot is taking away their DoorDash job. But I don't know. I think there's always going to be job displacement, and we're seeing more of that faster. But like if you can't keep up with it, I think you're just going to be left behind.
Yeah, and I do have a lot of sympathy for people who are losing their jobs because I think it's easy to say like, oh, go learn to code. Like remember that was like a huge movement, like probably like 5, 10 years ago. It's like big, oh, learn to code. And now everybody's like, oh, why'd you learn to code? Like the AI does that really well now.
Well, Andrew Ng just reversed his stance on what he said. He actually went back and said that learning to code is actually still a useful thing. It's almost as if we are treating code as another language. We're treating mathematics, English, reading, writing as such a basic skill. And this is there in the standardized tests and the SATs that we expect high school kids to read, write, and do math. And I think programming, reading, and reasoning and doing logic over software is going to be just as important because you know, everyone thinks that these AI tools, agents, coding bots are going to replace software engineers, but no, I think we need to go back to like the Satya Nadella Jevons paradox speech that he gave, explaining that as a resource gets cheaper, we're not going to need less of it. We're going to use orders of magnitude more of it. So as coding becomes easier, I think we're just going to deploy more software engineers to manage these swarms of AI agents. So that's a tricky one. I think it's still early to say whether or not you should stop learning code, but I still think there's a lot of value to understanding logic, software, because the world runs on code, and to understand how it works, even on like a conceptual level, will be very helpful.
Yeah, so I agree, and I think I partially. So I think that in the short term, I think you're 1,000% right. Where I think that there may be more software developers, but also each and every software developer will become much more efficient. So it's like it's hard to say exactly like will we need more software developers? Because it's like, yeah, a lot more software will be written, but then it's like if you have the AI augmenting a software developer, like do you actually need a lot more software developers? Or like can the increased productivity with the software developers make up for the fact that like you maybe have like the same amount or even fewer? So that is unclear. But yeah, so I'm not sure about that. But um, with the but I think like let's not talk about like next year or 2 years from now. Let's talk about maybe 10 years or 20 years from now when the AI is going to be clearly better than people at pretty much all things, right? Like especially like intellectual tasks. I think that the AI will be better at researching, better at software, better at all of these things than humans. So fine, right? But I kind of look at it a slightly different way, right? I think the reason to learn to code is because it's good for your brain, right? So I think that we, as like a society, have done a lot of things that, like, in the recent past, that like have not necessarily been great for like our mental health and our brains, like social media, or like having the AI think for us, or even like think about cars, right? Like, once we had cars, now people don't need to walk anymore. So more people became out of shape because like you just don't need, or it's not practical to walk for places. Now, because of that, like, we have gyms, right? So if I remember correctly, I read that like in the past, jogging was seen as like a really strange thing. People, like, if you were like running along the side of the road, people like, what are you doing? Like, what are you running from? It's like people didn't work out like as a concept, right? Like working out is actually a fairly modern concept, because 200 years ago, people were just like moving around throughout their day-to-day lives, right? Like most people, like 50+% of people worked on farms, and you were doing farm work like all day. You were moving around, bags of grain and carrying apples, and like, just like doing stuff, moving, doing things with your hand all day, every day. So like if you were going and working out or working in the fields all day, the last thing you would want to do is go to a gym. It just like it would make no sense to you, because like you're already in such good shape. But now, like, society has shifted where most of our time is spent behind a screen, sitting, thinking, and we just like don't use our bodies as much anymore. So now there's like a whole industry of people who go to the gym to work out, to get the required movement that like you would have just gotten by default, right? And I think that like in the future we're gonna have like essentially brain gyms. So like the reason to learn like another language, or the reason to learn a code, or the reason to do anything in the future will not be because it is necessarily like required to function in society, because the robots will do that better than any of us. But like the reason we will learn another language, and the reason we will go to the gym, and the reason we will learn to code is because it's good for our brains, and it will help like prevent dementia, and it'll make you feel good to solve a problem. And it's the same reason that people do puzzles, because when you do puzzles, you're not actually like solving anything of meaningful value, but like you do it because it's good for your brain and it's fun. And I think coding will at some point fall into that bucket, where just as we have body gyms, we're gonna have brain gyms in the future, and that's why it's good to learn to code in like the long run.
So I'm gonna segue this and try to do a good job of the segue. Another thing that might be good for learning and the brain is playing video games. So we have a lot of benchmarks that do standardized testing, ask question answers, retrieve information. Now we have puzzles with the ARC-AGI test. But like, I feel like playing a video game might be a strong multimodal test to check whether or not something is truly intelligent. And so DeepMind released a new agent that plays video games on its own. It is it's called SEMA2, an agent that plays, reasons, and learns with you in virtual 3D worlds. And this is awesome in a couple ways. So before, and I'm talking pre-ChatGPT, when they had AI agents playing video games, they had to custom train an AI model to learn that specific video game, like StarCraft or AlphaGo, for example. That was specifically trained on the game of Go. With this, they've just given the Gemini models, whatever the top of the line, I think they probably use Gemini 3, to look at what is going on in the game in real time and take instructions from the user, and then go and do stuff. Like over here, they probably said, "Hey, listen, navigate this ship to that island." I'm sharing for our audio listeners the blog post for SEMA 2. And this shows that these models are getting multimodal, or able to think, reason, and plan in virtual worlds at least. And this might be a good translation into the real world when we get robotics maturing and have a lot more robots proliferating in industries and specialized use cases. And like the hardest task of all is just go out there in the wild and in people's homes and do stuff that is useful and productive. So this is a pretty cool achievement. An AI agent that plays games on its own.
That is incredibly exciting. And I don't know how they're actually doing the world model. That's something I'm not super familiar with, but I do think that is a required skill set to have kind of the hyper abundant future, and it will be interacting with the world. Because I mean, the problem with LLMs is they're just next token predictors, and I mean that's incredibly powerful, but it's not sufficient to have robots doing everything, right? Like they're just really good at regurgitating information, which I mean like is fantastic, but again, it is like some may say stochastic parrots at the end of the day. And I think that was kind of Yann LeCun's big thing, where Yann LeCun, he was the head of like AI at Meta, and he is actually just left, and he's now going to start his own company. But that was his big thing, where he always felt that LLMs were insufficient for kind of his big dream, and he was a big fan of world models. So we'll have to see exactly what his new company will come up with, but yeah, I think world models are definitely going to be one piece of that hyper abundant future that we're looking for. So good job, Google, for creating that. And I'm actually, just as the segue, we'll look to see what Yann LeCun does.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask if you know much about the shakeup at Meta, because a few months ago they were paying tens of billions to acquire the world's best AI talent. They brought in Alexander Wang from Scale AI, one of the youngest billionaires out there, and his company Scale AI curated all the training data for all these models. So Scale was the name of their game. They wanted to provide really good quality data so these models can learn how to do better at all these different tasks. And so he was kind of like acqui-hired. A bunch of other people were poached from leading AI research labs, and they started this new super intelligence labs umbrella. And now there's like this massive shakeup. And I'm just like spitballing and hypothesizing here, but I feel like Yann LeCun, who's 65 and he's a recipient of the Turing Award and has contributed like some of like the foundational innovation in deep learning, and he's one of the godfathers of AI, for Christ's sake. Geoffrey Hinton was another godfather who was there at Google, and he said wonderful things about Google even after he left, because he loved working there, the way Google treated him. I'm curious to say how Yann LeCun looks back and talks about his time at Meta, specifically the new superintelligence labs. And I can see Zuck thinking that we need fresh blood, we need new talent, because he was a 20-something founder. He's one of the youngest billionaires too. And so he maybe sees the benefit of bringing in a lot of younger talent, because this is a wild new frontier where the previous learnings from several decades ago may not be as relevant in pushing the boundaries and being fast in this race, because most companies are releasing models not like every year, like the smartphone market, but like every few months. And Facebook has still been behind. They haven't released a solid frontier model for some time now. Their Llama models have been really good in the open source space, but even that, you had a couple of things to talk about. I think the Kimi K2 is also open source. DeepSeek and Alibaba has been making a lot of really good open source models. Um, so I'm curious to hear, maybe once the dust settles, if some of the senior folks at Meta, like Yann LeCun, who's the godfather, is one of the godfathers of AI, felt tired of taking orders from a 28-year-old kid who's now leading super intelligence labs at Meta.
Yeah, I
Very
think
interesting.
I think that's a very real possibility that he didn't like taking the orders from, a 20-something-year-old person as 65. But I would say that that may not be the reason. I mean, like it could be the reason that he leaves, but I sort of like from the outside looking in, I don't know Yann LeCun, so we'll maybe have to get him on the podcast and see like what he actually thinks about this. But like I see Yann LeCun as a very intelligent and smart researcher who is in love with solving hard problems and working on AI. And I think that one of the problems of working at a massive hyperscaler tech company is you are always focused. It's hard to focus on the long term, I think, where you need to focus on like how do I make money in the next quarter? How do I show a profit? Like you're dealing with a lot of just like management things. It's kind of a young person's game in a certain sense where you need to work long hours, managing people, moving resources around, and thinking of like, okay, it's like if you're at Facebook, how do you leverage the existing technology to make Instagram better, right? Like, how are you going to make WhatsApp better, right? I think these are the type of things that Facebook is focused on, right? But I think that like if I was Yann LeCun, right, I might just say, hey, look, like he's old enough, like he's got enough money. He might just be like, look, I like want to kind of just focus on AI. Like I don't want to deal with all of these things of like politics and whatnot. Like let me just I just want to go and focus on AI, build my world models and change the world. Like I think that not everybody who is like amazing at AI and research necessarily wants to play the game of business, and that's completely fine. So that's kind of how I read this. It's not like he necessarily was like looking for like some power grab, but it might just be like a lot. And there might be like a lot of really good people who have joined Meta who are fully capable. And Yann LeCun can now say, all right, like I've had like a really good handoff. Like maybe he was planning this for a long time, and now he can just focus on what he enjoys, and not worry about all these things. Like life's too short.
Yeah, speaking of, I feel like it's important to acknowledge that there's a lot of real concerns with AI, and some of these senior researchers, and by senior I mean those in their 60s, 70s, because Jeffrey Hinton is 77, Yann LeCun is 65, and they have seen this industry for like decades. Where while we, Mark and I, are in our 30s, still early in our careers, trying to make a name for ourselves, trying to make an impact on the world. So we might have a very different lens on how we see these events play out. Whereas I think Yann LeCun has tried to point out the massive energy costs for training these models. And then Jeffrey Hinton talks about um, some of the existential issues with a super intelligent AI. Like, what do we do in that case? So these researchers are so incredibly knowledgeable, and they have such an intuitive understanding of how these models work. And they can see like a new architecture and then kind of hypothesize what emerging capabilities will be available. So based on all of their decades of experience, I'm sure they're making very rational decisions, and hoping the best for them and hoping they contribute something even better to the world.
Yeah, 100%. Um, let's see. I don't know if I had too many more topics to talk about. Oh, actually, one thing, checking the notes.
No?
Congratulations, GenSpark. I saw that they are now a unicorn. So they raised money recently, and yeah, they're now valued at over $1 billion. So if you want to hear our conversations with one of the co-founders of GenSpark, Lenjoy Lin, yeah, you can look back at one of our previous episodes. We talk about the nitty gritty just when they had literally just launched, and now they just did a Series B funding. They raised $275 million at a $1.25 billion valuation. So congratulations, GenSpark.
Yeah, here's to all the people doubting that a ChatGPT wrapper would be a viable business model. But I think they've surprised everyone with the speed and velocity with which their team has been releasing features and really solid use cases. I remember I used their slides agent to make a slide presentation for one of our meetups. And it was like the most amazing slide that I've ever created in my entire life. But then, once it was shown that this was possible, I think there've been a ton of other companies, Canva and Gamma, which is now also a unicorn, a $2 billion unicorn. Exciting times, though.
Yeah. Oh, and I know we just threw around the word unicorn. Unicorn is just a private company with a valuation of over $1 billion. So in case you were wondering, we were talking about that's what it is. Private company. So not public company, $1 billion valuation.
Some Silicon Valley jargon for you. There isn't a term for a $1 trillion private company. I think OpenAI will need to make a new one, a narwhal or something.
A narwhal? That what is a narwhal? That's like a whale or something?
It's like a unicorn of the sea.
Oh. Oh, that's cool. Oh, they'd be much bigger than a unicorn. Oh, I like that. All right. Everybody who's listening to this, we coined a new term. A $1 trillion private company is the narwhal. So we're going to continue to refer to as that. The narwhal.
Nice.
We'll see if that one catches on.
I think that's it from my end. There were a bunch of new announcements with newer models. We talked about GPT 5.1, GrokMate 4.1. Industry keeps progressing. But I think just to close out one thought that I had, because we were talking about some of the godfathers of AI. The third godfather is Yoshua Bengio, who hasn't joined industry as far as I know. He's always been in academia, teaching at the University of Montreal. But I think was he married to Feifei Li? I forget. Feifei Li, another prominent godmother of AI. She developed the data set to train these image models early on at Stanford because nothing existed. So she built ImageNet, which was used to train a model to classify images. And she teaches at Stanford and consults at Google and a variety of things. But I was listening to a podcast with her and another separate podcast, unrelated, from Demis Hassabis, the CEO of DeepMind at Google, at Alphabet. And they were talking about how these models keep getting better. I think Gemini 3 is the best model yet from Google. It's amazing, but it's still a long ways away technically from AGI. Despite how useful these models might be, these very senior researchers and founders of the field of AI feel like we're still maybe a couple breakthroughs away from figuring out a new model that will get us there. But I think we're still seeing a lot of impact and specialized use cases where these models are replacing jobs. So just some food for thought.
Yeah, actually, since you mentioned Jeffrey Hinton, there's a friend that goes to the meetup that messaged me the other day, maybe a month or two ago, and he's like, Mark, I just reached out to Jeffrey Hinton and I told him my idea for AGI, and then Hinton responded like, yeah, makes sense. So I don't want to say who that was, but yeah, just if you're listening, thought that was kind of cool. So yeah, there's people who are working on it, and I think that have exciting ideas.
That's amazing. I want to know after this who it is.
Yeah, I'll tell you. All right.
Well, that's it for me.
All right. Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoy it, please like and comment, ask a question. The markets have been rough and we don't make any money from this. So, your likes and praise is all the payment that we get. So, it would be really nice if you'd like leave a kind comment, because that's pretty much the only way we make money from this, is just like through your accolades. So I really appreciate that. Anyways, we'll catch you in the next one.